You're listening to the Career Plus Life Catch-Up, episode number 50. Welcome to the Career Plus Life Catch-Up, a show anchored in reality to help you create a balanced life where you enjoy both your work and your life, because you don't have to choose. I am your host, Cecile Ferry, a corporate executive turned coach and working mom. This is your place for insights, advice, and tools to optimize your career direction, balance, and confidence. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into it. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to episode number 50. Wow. As I am recording this, I'm just sitting in this and taking it in. I've already done 50 episodes. I know it's not much compared to some people online, compared to some other people here that may have done 300, 400, 1,000 episodes. But for me, I remember episode number 1, and where I'm sitting now at episode number 50, there has been so much growth in my life, both professionally and personally, and even just with this podcast, that I'm looking back with a lot of pride and also a lot of gratitude for all of you who have listened to most, if not all, or even just a couple of those 50 episodes. So I cherish you. I couldn't do it without an audience, and that's who you are. So I want to say a big thank you from the bottom of my heart. And today I was thinking, what am I going to deliver? What am I going to bring? Episode 50, like you just create your own pressure just because of a number. And I thought, what would resonate? And what came to me today is to talk about all the things that I have learned probably in the last 10 years, as if I was back there and I could give that advice to my 30-year-old self. So if you're listening to this episode and you are not in your 30s, don't worry. I think this will apply and will be interesting for anybody listening. And you may have friends or relatives around that age that you want to share this podcast with. So feel free to share it with them online, on social media. Don't get me wrong, my 30s were a great decade, but I find it is such a critical sort of turning point in our lives. So I didn't want to go back to my 20s, but really to look at all the lessons I have learned in the last 10 years and bring them to you. So I have 8 to share with you, and I'm going to go and talk about career as much as life. So both sides of the equation. Before we start, I think it's also a really great exercise to do for yourself, to pull up a piece of paper, and before you listen to my lessons, ask yourself, what would you say to your 30-year-old self? What were the things that you find out that you wish maybe you would have done differently if you had to go again? I think this is so powerful to ask yourself those questions, way more than what's missing in my life right now, for instance. Way more than why haven't I been able to achieve that? Why is this not happening, right? So ask those more positive questions. What have I learned? And what were all the things that I now know that are carrying me forward? So are you ready? Let's all kind of travel back in time. If you're in your 40s like me, or even if you're in your 30s, go and listen up, because you will find some of those lessons that if you take them on board and you apply them quickly, you will just fast track your personal growth and your success. And by the way, if you're in your 40s, don't think that none of this is going to apply and that it's just all done and dusted and we can all move on, because it's the truth that we all have different paces of growth. And some of the topics I'm going to talk about today, you might be going through them right now in your early 40s or mid 40s, and there is no shame and nothing wrong about that. So it's not because I experienced them in my 30s that it's the same model for everyone. So just listen in, and it's probable that some of those lessons or all of them will resonate with you at some point, whether you have gone through them and you can actually acknowledge it, and what I will say will crystallize something in you, or you might be just still going through that, or it's coming at you, and that way you will know what to do about it. I hope you're getting excited. Let's get into it together. So my first piece of advice is around career and kids. And by the way, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything today. That's what happens when you're in your 40s. So my first piece of advice is advance your career and don't care about when you have kids, right? Because I think there's so much social pressure. But my advice, if I was going back to myself, and that's what I did actually in my 30s, is to do it when you feel ready, to disregard what people are doing, what you think is the accepted model, what, the cliches are saying, and everything about from what age you have kids and how many kids you have and how many years you put in between your children. Like, all of that, get rid of all of that additional pressure and just do things that feel right to you. You can have a great career before kids or after kids. Both are completely possible. But what I have found is quite often after kids, you will feel less like it. So my advice is probably to go as far as possible into your career pre-kids. Obviously not if you're not enjoying your job or if that's not where you're at in terms of your goals. Otherwise, just really go as far as you can, because it will be much easier for you afterwards to get back to even only a part-time position or do something else on the side or start something new when you've already acquired a certain level of experience and seniority in your career. So that's advice that was given to me that I have followed and it has worked well for me. Like, you can totally keep really growing and go to a senior level after you have children or when your children are still young. But you are probably going to be in a different headspace and you have more complication then. So it's a lot easier and more straightforward to do it prior, as long as this is something that agrees with you. But otherwise, just have kids whenever is right for you and disregard everybody else, all your friends and your families and your parents and all those well-meaning people, and just don't listen to any of those voices that you internalize as yours, and just listen to yourself. I recall myself that for me at the time, the experience of having kids really meant in my mind being pregnant and then having a baby. And now looking back, I realized this experience is actually a whole lot more than starting a family. I think my horizon was really short there. And it's really about, once you have children, it's about being a parent every day, which teaches you a whole lot about yourself, right? And you never would have thought that. So it's like you're entering the next school of life for yourself when you become a parent. So be ready to space it out and to do it when it feels right for you. And by the way, life doesn't stop after kids. That is not something I needed to hear as advice, because I never subscribed to that. But if you hear that, just get rid of that. That is not the truth. Advice number 2. I'm going to start going deep and personal here. Work on feeling worthy and lovable now. Not when you will have something, like when you will have a great job, when you will have this house, when you will be married and have a husband, when you will have kids, all those things we want to tick, when you will have achieved your material goals mainly. Or don't feel like you will be good, you will be well, you will be worthy and lovable if you've done a big trip overseas, or if you earn that kind of money, right? The idea that you are better if you do certain things or have certain things, which most of us fall prey to in our 30s, this idea is flawed. Having those things changes nothing. Yes, they can bring you some level of material comfort, but they don't change how you feel and they don't change how you think about yourself and the world. We all get sold all these ideas of arriving or making it around that time in our life. But we don't arrive. We don't get there. We are just in a good phase of growth, ready to start grasping things. So instead of going after those things, hoping to feel worthy and enough and lovable out of those external things, it's important to focus on yourself, to feel enough independently of the job, of the relationship, or the money. And that's hard because the world goes the other way. And when you're in your 30s, you're usually at a decent level where you have enough money so you can start building those material things. And therefore you want them and you crave them. But the problem is you think they're going to bring you something on a personal level. They're going to make you feel worthy. They're going to make you feel at peace within yourself. And none of those things have the power to do that. Only you can do that. So if I had my time back, I would say to my 30-year-old something: invest in tools, in people, in support to get to know yourself and to feel worthy and to feel enough without those things, because that is really how life is built, and that's how fulfillment and happiness happens, not through those other things that will spend some time and some energy to chase up, but then we end up in our mid to late 30s and we don't feel more worthy and we don't feel more lovable in spite of having all those things. So it's actually the proof, right? So we can save ourselves a lot of that work by focusing earlier in our life on feeling enough without those things. But I grant it to you, like, this is not something anyone teaches anywhere, right? We all get to that place much later when we're still seeking our worth and our sense of value. Advice number 3. That's another very direct piece of advice. Cut off the implicit parental cord. We may think we don't, have that cord anymore. We're in our 30s. We may be even living quite far in a different country from our parents. But things are still at play in our subconscious, of course, because it's been 30 years that we have parents, especially the first probably 15, 20 years of our life. They are really at the forefront of our reality and they shape our thinking, whether we like it or not. So we're the same person, even if they're not in our physical environment as much. So that's why I use the word implicit. And therefore, we make choices and we do things based on what we subconsciously think our parents would think, what they would approve of, what they would validate, or what would please them. So I know this can sound confronting and you might think like, no way, but this is just normal human life. We've been conditioned a certain way and we will seek that even if it's unconscious to us. So we may not be connected with them in our physical environment, but that's why we maintain that connection through our mental, through our mind, through our subconscious mind, where we still stay roughly in alignment, right? And also there is that feeling of belonging that is a core feeling of human beings. So we may be growing in our lives, but we want to make sure we remain part of the tribe, we remain part of the pack that we grew up with. And we are too far away from the parental model or the parental level of success. So typically in our careers, especially, our parental influence can be still very strong, where we will make career choices and stay in those career paths even if they're not particularly right for us. So what carries us through in our 20s is the learning that is a strong motivator. And in our 30s, we've already learned quite a lot. And that's when we must start thinking, what am I here for, right? Learning isn't enough of a motivator anymore. So at that time, what I would say to my 30-year-old self is, instead, turn your attention to you, to the human being that you are and the unique human being that you are, who you are and what you love. So that connection that you are seeking with your parent, turn it from them to yourself, because that is the most important relationship you need to cultivate in your life. And that never stops, right? You just carry through your life. But I think in your 30s is when you really need to start to cut that cord and to build your own self with your own sense of values. So when you can have conversations with your parents where they disagree or they try to tell you to do something else, and you can just pause and not react, and sometimes even smile internally at what they say, that's when you know you've cut the implicit cord. Advice number 4, and this is absolutely in link with what I've just said about cutting the implicit parental cord. So what? Well, what you need to do is to know your personality type and energy type. So we all grow up and we are all being put kind of together in the one category, right? At school and then afterwards. So we're sort of treated equally, like we're kind of all the same, right? We're kids and we turn into students and then we go into the workforce. But we miss a whole component of ourselves that nobody really put their attention onto when we were studying and then when we're in our jobs. And it's that we each are different human beings and we have different styles, different way of beings. There are some, general main categories of people and categories of style. And unless we know ourselves a bit, we are going to be making poor choices or choices led by our parents. And those choices unfold with our time, our energy, and our relationships. So what sort of styles am I talking about? For instance, are you an introvert or an extrovert? Are you a very active, action-oriented type, result-driven person? Or are you more a slow and steady kind of person that builds things over time? Do you have really strong masculine energy or are you more into the feminine, softer energy? What are your character strengths and character traits? What do you need to feel good? Those are kind of the makeup of your personality around everything that you learn and that you grow into. But this is so important to find the right element for you. Because otherwise, we end up doing hobbies or exercises out of habit or duty, or we don't hang out with people who don't energize us. We stay in careers that don't align with our personality, even if we are good at them. So we can be technically really good at them, but just not get that much joy from them because they don't bring up that spark in us. So instead, we need to make life choices according to our true essence, which our parents may not have respected or may not even have looked into. They just never really knew about this. So this is the opportunity in your 30s when you've taken some of that distance to really explore. And you can do personality tests, you can do some life coaching, you can do some career coaching, so you really know who you are before you make too many decisions or before you get too late in your life and you have a midlife crisis. Advice number 5. I'm getting super serious with that one. Some people's behaviors are not okay. By the way, this applies beyond the 30s, but that's when I wish I had learned that principle. Some people's behaviors are not okay. So don't make excuses for them or think it might be you who needs more of something or that it is normal and justify it with a reason to do with you. For instance, at work, having an abusive manager, having a bully, having people or managers taking the credit for your work, or in relationship, being with someone who doesn't respect you, who is not supportive, who is self-focused, who is denying you what you want or making decisions without yourself. All those kind of treatments. Or even with your parents, if they are forcing you to do certain things or they're manipulating you to get their way or they're constantly criticizing your life or your kids. They may be your parents, but that behavior is not okay. Or even examples with friendships, when friends take advantage of you or straight out lying. So when we come out of our 20s and when we are early 30s, we still don't have the full self-confidence to question that. And the tendency is to think it might be our fault or, we're just not comfortable with it. We know it's not quite right, but we push it down, or we buffer to kind of escape the bad feeling that we have around it, and we just don't tackle it, or we don't try to address it or find a solution to it, and we just wish it just would go away, right? It's like that kind of noise in the background. So basically, we are just a little bit too blind to those things. And it's only later in life, once those things have stayed with us for so long, that they have had, unfortunately, pretty significant consequences on our well-being, on our happiness level, all of that. And then we are really reassessing and we're changing things. But we already knew those things, and they might start in our 30s. So I just want to say, if that resonates with you and you're having some of those behaviors, they are not okay. And this is not your fault, and this is not you who is seeing them a certain way. Let's just call them for what they are. They're not okay. So how to know? Well, ask around to people who are more experienced than you, or people you really trust. I wouldn't say ask people who are in the same boat as you, because they don't know either, and they will be like you, trying to justify that maybe, it's something, maybe it's something it's not, right? Or just straight away, if you can, go and access a professional and ask them, people that will have a qualified, objective opinion in that topic. And then walk away if necessary. Even if that just feels hard and that takes bravery at that age. But trust me, you will do more harm to yourself the longer you stay. So don't put up with behaviors that are not acceptable, whether they're in your career, in your life, anywhere in between. You are worthy of being treated well and to be in the right environment at any point in your life. Advice number 6, don't worry about finding love with a big L and needing to be in a relationship. Again, this is the absolute setting for social expectations together with marriage, right? You should be in a relationship in your 30s. Like, it's time, and you need to settle down, and you need to get married, and you need to have kids, and blah, blah, blah. That is all one way of thinking, like a type of thinking. But this isn't the absolute way of thinking. There is B type of thinking, and C type, and D type, and E type, and all the way to the end of the alphabet. But the problem is, like, A is just amplified through all the media and the collective consciousness. So everyone is following A. So you feel like, well, I need to be following A, or something is wrong with me. So especially with relationship, that is not the case. Look at how many people are divorced 10 years later. Right? If you need a proof, that's one. And the type of path, like, look at people's love life in their 40s and 50s. There is a lot more than one single type of living arrangement, right? There's all those different situations and scenarios, people still together who are not happy, people who have broken up and have repartnered for the better, people that have broken up and not repartnered and being happy on their own. Like, there's all those different scenarios. I don't know why in our 20s and 30s we funneled into we should all fit that model, because when you look afterwards, the funnel just rewindens and things are vastly different based on different people. So don't go for that narrow funnel, and don't be jammed into that, and just know that you have the freedom to decide, and that there isn't a critical time and a critical model or path to follow. There is nothing wrong if you didn't find love at a certain age, or if you're not married by a certain age. Exactly like for kids. We all have a life path, and we have to trust it. We cannot force it. We cannot try to control it. Have you noticed when we try to control it, it doesn't work anyway? So if it hasn't happened to you the way you thought it would, relax. Enjoy today. Because forcing your way into a relationship that doesn't quite work, that isn't quite right, will only bring bigger complications down the track. So being single is okay. And it is more than okay. It is as okay and as good as valid as being in a relationship. Advice number 7, have less but better friends. Right, so if I look around, a lot of my friends that I have currently, I have been friends with for 5 or 10 years at least. We were often friends before kids. Yes, some have dropped off. They were just not meant to stay. Or some friendships are just meant to be there for a couple of years in your life. Not all of them are meant to last. Some were like work colleagues that I didn't have much in common with, or sometimes they can be our school friends that we gradually move away from. Could even be our mother's group. We might feel really close at the time our kids grow up really young, and then over time we just gradually all start to gravitate apart. So what I've learned is that we only need a few friends, and therefore we need to handpick them. So pick those who align with your values, because they will have similar values and therefore you can experience them together. So when you spend time together, you do things that both energize each other. It's just like chemistry, right? And also you need to invest in those friendships. Then you identify around your 30s, and then you invest in time, in nurturing, in generosity, and in listening. And when you do that, you are going to reap the reward for both you and the other person. So I'm not saying just like pick 3 people and just disregard everybody else. No, but know who to put first and know where to invest your time, energy, and focus. Typically, you want those people to be of similar or even higher levels of success as you. It's not me saying that. All the personal development books will tell you that you are the sum of the 5 people you most hang out with. So especially in your 30s, where you get to the point where your social life and your number of friendships can really peak because you have really added so many circles into your life, from your school years, from your various hobbies and friendships through to the people you're working with. And then there could be circles coming from your partner's side, and then your family gets bigger, right? So the pool is really big around that time. But it is just also the best time to look at those people and to curate your friendship, to start curating them and then see what happens. You may have picked a friendship that will not end the way that you thought it would be, but pick people that look like the next version of you. They are going where you are going to, and you only need up to 5 people. But make sure those people reflect where you want to go. Because otherwise you will end up with people who are insecure around you or are jealous or pulling you down. And my final piece of advice, number 8, relax a lot more. That's definitely one that I wish I had told myself back then. So if we look, the weight of our expectations at that age. You don't even feel it yourself when it's that massive. But by your 30s, it can get pretty damn huge and heavy. All those hopes, all those goals, all those must-haves, strong desires, usually associated with a good dose of perfection and high standards, can create a huge grip on our mindset, and so big and so intense that we barely see it. We just live under it. But it surely drives our actions day in, day out. So relax. Stop and think. What am I doing this for? Who says it's needed? Is this something I perceive as required? Or would other people also agree on that too? Because we get in our 30s to the stage where we peak in our life with the layers and layers of conditioning, new learning, and choices available to us. That turns into a complex web of expectations of ourselves, of others, and often this then turns into a trail of disappointment, of frustrations, and potentially setbacks. So what if we took some of those bags off to start with and therefore lowered our expectations? Or decide that we're going to focus on one or two areas of our life first and then move on to the next, not want to have the whole and complete totality of our life looking exactly the way that we want it to look. Those of us that do this, that have all these compounding level of expectations by the time we hit our 30s, those of us who don't get to understand that end up pretty much confronted with that reality, and sometimes having to pay for it comes motherhood time, because then it's just burst and we just cannot sustain that level of expectations. So we need to shed some of these expectations earlier on. We need to simplify. We need to declutter. We need to keep what we feel good about plus what is actually serving us. And we don't need anybody's permission to do that, just ours. So if you remember anything from today, it's just to relax and carry on in your 40s and keep ditching more and keep releasing more and just being true to yourself and shedding everything else that you don't need. That is all I had for you, my friends, today for this 50th episode. I hope some or all of those really resonated with you, from deciding when and how many kids you're going to have, to cutting the parental cord, to not worrying about when to find love, to knowing yourself and your personality, to dropping some of your standards and relaxing. Like, all of these are great life lessons, whether we learn them in our 30s or 40s or 50s and we carry them through. But I believe they are really important to really acquire and to model our life around in those very exciting time where now we have a lot of life experience and we're just looking to the next step. And life is really looking up for us, let's be honest. And the world is full of opportunities. So if we use some of those lessons and principles, we'll save ourselves some of the headaches and heartaches potentially. And notice a lot of those lessons come from social expectations. So there's a bit of a theme, right? A lot of it is to disregard what other people say is right or is the way to do things, and to avoid that comparison with other people. And I know this is something really, really hard. And it's taken me until my 40s to really now master the courage to make decisions where I'm just ready to be on my own. And I don't care if people think that it's not right or I shouldn't have done that. It takes a long time. So if you can do that in your 30s, kudos to you. But otherwise, we're all a work in progress on that front. So thank you very much again for tuning in. I look forward to another 50 amazing episodes to bring to you here with plenty of inspiration. Please message me on Facebook, on Instagram at Career Catch Up, on Facebook and my Facebook community, the Career Catch Up, where you can just interact with me and tell me what you would like me to talk about. It's been a pleasure delivering all those episodes to you today. I cannot even describe what this podcast brings me. It's really aligned with who I am as a person. I know that now. And it's taken me a few years to start it, but I am so glad that I did. So I hope it resonates with you and that it makes your life better. Thank you to you all. Have a beautiful week, and I'll speak to you in the next episode. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to find out more information, you can visit my website at careercatchup.com. There you will find blog articles, free resources, a self-study course for your career direction, and ways to work with me. It's at careercatchup.com. I hope to continue to connect with you and support you. Talk to you soon.